Hello and welcome to SwitchUp. Today we're going to look at the 10 most recent physical games that I have acquired for the Nintendo Switch. A fair few of these are actually limited or collector's editions, so obviously I'll show you the box art, but I'll also show you any little bits and bobs that came with it too. We'll have a general chat about the game itself, and finally we'll have a look at any updates you need to download and exactly how much of your Switch's memory these will take up. Because if you're anything like me, I hate it when you buy a game physically and then have to download a huge patch or update as soon as you put the game in. This information will be down at the bottom under the game's title as we talk about each one, as well as the price that I got the game for or the company that I got it from. Okay, with all that said, let's get started. The first game I picked up then was Snack World The Dungeon Crawl Gold. Now this game is developed by Level 5, but it was published by Nintendo over here in the West. Although to be honest, Nintendo seemed to do very little to promote this one, and it kind of just snuck out. This is an ARPG dungeon crawler, which is fairly standard in terms of the mechanics, and has an art style which is colourful but kind of bland at the same time. But what really does serve it well is its sense of humour. It takes place in the kingdom of Tutti Frutti, I think it's called, and everything is food based, and there's a whole bunch of puns, some very obvious, but some are actually quite clever. There's a host of story missions as well as side missions as well, and you go on runs into dungeons and obviously pick up loot and level up at the same time, taking on bosses, going back to the village, doing it all again. What I would say about this one is, had I paid the eShop price of £39.99, I don't think I would have felt as if I'd got my money's worth, to be perfectly honest, but having paid £19.99 for the physical version from Amazon, that was a price that I felt much more comfortable paying, and for the 2-3 hours I've put in so far, I have quite enjoyed it. The next game I picked up was Vampyr, which again I found for £19.99 from Amazon. This one has actually been reviewed on the channel anyway by Mark, and I've only played about an hour of this one so far. You take on the role of a doctor, Jonathan Reed, who looks very much like Olivier Giroud, who plays for Chelsea, and having been turned into a vampire, you are kind of torn between your new lust for blood and the oath that you've taken as a doctor. It's a third-person action game, and as a huge fan of the Universal monsters from back in the 30s, one of which of course was Dracula, I enjoy anything vampire-based. Well, not absolutely anything. I'm enjoying the world that the game is building around me as I play, and the way that vampire lore, if you like, is being accommodated into that world. Although on a more negative side, I would say that the combat feels a little clunky. Now I did hear some people say that the frame rate for this game wasn't great at launch. There is a patch available, so even if you buy the physical version, if you download that, it will still cost you 545 megabytes of your system memory, and so far I must say I haven't seen any significant frame rate issues. Now I will say, as I have already said, to be fair, that I'm only about an hour in and I haven't been anywhere in the game yet that's overly populated, so it may well just be this, but that patch is available nonetheless.
Every sinew, every fibre of my being is afire.
The next game I have here to show you is Rock of Ages 3 Make and Break, and this one was sent to us by the publishers of this particular game, so thank you very much to you. And they sent it, as you can see, in this very elaborate box, which I'm delighted to say also included a stick of rock, which saves me a trip down to Southend. You can't get near the beach for love nor money at the minute anyway. Rock of Ages 3 joins its predecessor, Rock of Ages 2, in coming to the Switch, and these are tower defense games first and foremost, but they have an incredible sense of humour, very much like Monty Python. You definitely get that feeling from them. You basically have to either build defences to stop your opponent's boulders crashing down your castle door, or you yourself control the boulders and try to knock down their front door, but whilst doing so you'll have to navigate a quite complex obstacle course as well as the traps that they put down for you. The story mode really highlights the humour I mentioned earlier, with some fantastic cutscenes using historical figures in quite humorous ways, and generally ending with two of them facing off against each other, and that leads you into the aforementioned tower defense mechanic. This particular game has a make and a break section, hence the name, with make being where you can create your own levels and break being the story mode that I mentioned just now. In terms of the level creator, I did find it quite difficult to use at first. It doesn't feel as intuitive as it should be, even with Napoleon Bonaparte giving you instructions. It's quite fiddly to get the hang of at first, but after about 15-20 minutes I was starting to get there, although the course I made was shocking, to the point, as you can see, where Humpty Dumpty wanted to just jump straight off the track. There's also a 2-player local mode, and I think it's up to 4 players online, and I played a bit of this with my daughter as well, and we had a good time with it. The next game I bought then was Umehara Kua Fresh. Now this is a US import. This game didn't get a physical release in Europe, although I didn't actually import it. I bought it via eBay for about £22. It's a Nicalis release, although it doesn't come with the usual goodies that those games do come with other than an instruction manual. This one also has an update when you first put the game in. It's only a small one though, about 109 megabytes, so nothing too big. And the game itself, or the series itself, has actually been around since the Super Nintendo. You play as a young girl named Kawase, who is a travelling chef, and she has a fishing rod which she uses to get around the levels, and it also allows her to stun enemies, which you can then collect to use as ingredients in your recipes. Now what's interesting about this game is that the fishing rod's mechanics work very much like a rubber band, so you don't hook onto a surface and then swing across Indiana Jones style. You instead kind of just boing around at the top of the screen for a while until you get the hang of it, and it does take some getting used to, I must say. When you do start to get the hang of it though, it feels very unique. It's a very different type of platformer. In terms of the game's art style, the character portraits are really nice actually, and the backgrounds themselves are quite charming, although the 3D character models do look a bit awkward. I would recommend this one if you're looking for a platform game but want something to challenge you in a different way to usual. And the next game I picked up was actually a Father's Day present from my kids, and by my kids I mean via my wife, you know what it's like, and this is Enter the Gungeon. Now this is another game that didn't see a physical release over here in Europe. This again is a US import, but again it came via eBay, and I think this cost around £28 give or take. This one comes with some bits inside, some stickers and some bits you can make out of paper, plus it has a soundtrack, and the game itself includes all of the DLC, including a Farewell to Arms. Now Enter the Gungeon of course is a roguelite, a fantastic game, and it was one I wanted to pick up physically when I heard that they were bringing it out that way, although then had the disappointment of hearing that it wouldn't be coming over here. This is a game I haven't put too much time into, although I did play a chunk of it 2-player with Mark. He has it on his Switch, so I'm looking forward to having a proper go of it now myself, now that I own it. It's up there with some of the best roguelites on the Switch. Not my favourite personally, although that may change as I play more of it, but The Binding of Isaac and possibly Risk of Rain are just ahead of it for me. And the next game I bought was a game called World of Goo, which came via a company named Super Rare Games. Super Rare Games are one of the limited print run companies that exist these days. They are UK based and they've been going for about 18 months now, I think, give or take, and I've used them a few times in the past. This game cost me about £30 with a couple of pounds postage, I think, which is a fair bit more than its eShop counterpart, but this was a game that I've always wanted physically ever since I first played it back on WiiWare, and it was a game that came to the Switch very early in the system's life too. World of Goo is a puzzle game where you have to use the blobs of goo that you have at your disposal, trying to link them together to reach a vacuum, at which point the goo balls will be sucked up into it and you go on to the next level. What makes it more difficult than it probably just sounded is the fact that it's physics based, and the towers that you build out of the balls of goo will fall or implode into themselves if you don't balance them properly. It's a very fun game, but does get really difficult when you're trying to stack these goo balls up, and there are different ones as well, some that act as balloons and other things that make it more difficult as you go. You have to use the Joy-Cons to play on the Switch as you use the pointer controls, or you can play it in handheld mode and use the touchscreen. Whilst the game itself is fantastic, if your Joy-Cons are a drifting pile of absolute dogs droppings like mine, then you're probably better off playing it in handheld mode and using the touchscreen, as I said a minute ago. Talking of Super Rare Games a moment ago, and the game that I bought from them, well, they actually sent us a couple of games as well in this last month, which was very nice of them. And the first of those is Graceful Explosion Machine. This is another game that came out very early in the Switch's life, and is a shoot 'em up which takes place in one area, so if you reach the end of the screen, you appear at the other end of the screen, if you know what I mean. What's really interesting about this one is that you have 4 main weapons as you go along. You have your traditional blaster, you have a sniper shot, you have like an energy blade almost, and you finally have a barrage of bullets that you can fire out. And how much you can use these is determined by your energy bar. You need to try and kill all enemies on the screen. It's phase based, so there are 3 phases per level, stacking up as big a combo as you can to get those high scores whilst not overheating that energy bar and running out of power, therefore not being able to shoot. It's about knowing when to use which weapon and when to switch. You also have a dash move that you can use to get out of a tight fix. It's a great game, one that was perhaps well known when it first came out when the Switch had fewer games and it was one of the bigger releases, in terms of indie games at least. Maybe has been forgotten about a little bit since. The game's initials here are GEM of course, and this most certainly is a gem on the eShop. And the second game that Super Rare Games sent to us was the Sexy Brutale. Now this is a game I've wanted to play for a long time. It's basically an adventure puzzle game set in a mansion with a time travel mechanic which you must use as the inhabitants are being killed off. Now I haven't had a chance to play this game yet, we've just had so many reviews to do, and I might include it again in the next episode of this series when I've had a chance to play it properly, because it is a game I'm very much looking forward to playing, to be able to give my thoughts on it. But the reason I wanted to include it this time is because when this game released I remember hearing that the performance of it wasn't particularly good. It has had a patch since, but this physical version actually includes that patch on the cart, which is really good practice and is something that I would love to see happening more so in the future. Now obviously that's not always going to be possible if a game releases physically and digitally at the same time, but in these instances when a company picks it up for a limited print run, it's nice to see it being put on the cart for that money that you are paying. And the next one, a really lovely one this was a wedding anniversary present from my wife. This is the collector's edition of Close to the Sun. Now I'll show you the collector's edition first and then we'll talk about the game, but as part of this you get a certificate of authenticity. This here I've got number 695 of 1000. You get a lovely art book, really nice quality art book, hardback. You get the soundtrack to the game, but you get it on LP, which is lovely. I've got my record player set up in our front room, and I've got a few video game soundtracks on LP, so I'll add this one to the collection. You get a steelbook case for the game, as well as the standard game case. And finally you get a letter which kind of ties in with the plot of the game. We'll discuss that in a moment. It's all kept in this beautiful box. It's really of a high standard, and this will most certainly take pride of place in my collection. As for the game itself, now this is a game that I had played briefly before. We got a review code in and this is one Mark did, although I think it went in a buy and avoid in the end. But basically I remember playing a bit of it and the performance was shocking, really bad. Now this game does have an update when you put the physical game in, and it comes to a size of 377 megabytes, and some of those problems do seem still to be present. The game stutters at times, there's a lot of loading in of assets as well as you walk along, and the game generally just has that blur look to it. It looks like someone smeared the screen with Vaseline. One thing that I will say has improved is the performance of handheld mode. Now when I played it, as I say briefly back then, playing in handheld was actually quite nauseating. It really did make you feel quite sick, it was so choppy. That seems quite a bit better now, so I'm assuming the patch has fixed that, but the game is still not in great shape. Having said that, to be honest, I don't really care when I'm playing this sort of game with my missus. We'll still enjoy it, so that's fine. The plot centres around a ship called the Helios, and you receive a letter from your sister, hence the letter I mentioned earlier, asking you to come and meet her there, and when you arrive and you get onto the ship, you see the word quarantine painted on the ship. Yeah, not one to buy if you're looking for a smooth performance, but if you just want something story based and you don't mind those technical hiccups, you may still have fun with it.
You got yourself into, Ada. Great.
And the final game for the month then, this is Streets of Rage 4, the Signature Edition. This was sent to us by Merge Games, so thank you very much to you. Now, anyone that saw my review for Streets of Rage 4, I'll put a link to any relevant video for the games in this video here in the top pink comment. You will know that I loved this game. I gave it 90%, I believe. I was gutted when they said that Streets of Rage was only going to get a release via limited run games, and then equally as delighted when it turned out that wasn't the case, and Merge Games had also picked up publishing duties for it. Now these signature editions are some of the best collector's editions you can get for the Switch, or they are available on other consoles as well. The boxes are so sturdy, the stuff you get inside them is of a good quality. As you can see in this one, you get the soundtrack to the game, which is fantastic, especially for the Streets of Rage series, as well as some nice enamel pins of the main characters and some other bits and bobs. I won't go too far into the game itself because, as I said, there's a review down there if you want to watch it, but it is a game that I felt did the Streets of Rage name a huge amount of justice after years in development hell to get the game that we finally got. For me, I was delighted. Now, in terms of my favourite game out of all of these that I've got over the last few months, the official party line, of course, is the one that my missus got me for our anniversary, but this is Streets of Rage 4, come on, this game's amazing. So there you have it, 10 games that I have acquired over the last few months. I hope you enjoyed this video. I didn't just want to show the games and the boxes off, I wanted to give you a bit more information than that. Please do let me know of any games you've picked up physically. I've said it so many times before, I love watching or hearing about other people's physical pickups. It's something that really interests me. Stick it in the comments section below by all means. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Thanks again to any of the companies that sent us bits for this video, it's very much appreciated. Take care, stay safe of course, and until next time, happy gaming.